Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So excited to have my next guest on the show, Aswad Thomas. He is the current vice president of the Alliance for Safety and Justice, and he is doing amazing work for all kinds of communities in the country. He travels all over the place. He's also an author. We're going to get into it. Aswad, thank you for the reschedule, brother. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on today.
So, what got you on your path, brother? I mean, there's always a catalyst, there's always something that get somebody on their current path. Your case happens to be an amazing good path.
Mhm.
Um, what was the catalyst, brother?
Yeah, for me, before I joined the Alliance for Safety and Justice, or even working in a nonprofit, I'm a former basketball player. In 2009, I had just became the first male in my family to ever graduate from college, and also I signed with a professional basketball agent to start my professional basketball career overseas in Europe. So for me, like that year of 2009, that was the highest point of my life. Like just graduated from college, I was on my way to play professional basketball, but it quickly became the lowest point in my life when I was shot twice in my back while leaving a corner store in Hartford, Connecticut. And those bullets ended my professional basketball career and nearly my life as well. But like so many victims, I was released from the hospital back into that same community with no help.
So I know you've overcome so much adversity, brother, but what led to the shooting? Were you just walking out and minding your own business, or and you just bam get attacked? I mean, what was? Can you put a little bit more context to it?
Yeah, so it was just, it was a hot summer day, just leaving out a convenience store in my neighborhood. And as I was walking back to my vehicle, two people approached me, with guns. And, in that, split second, for me, I've never been in trouble, college graduate, kind of did all the right things in life. So, to be approached, with handguns in my face, it was such a scary experience. And I remember I kind of had like three thoughts that came to my mind when those two individuals approached me. One, should I just put my key in the ignition and drive off? The first thing that came to mind for me, but I watched the movie. You kind of see how the scenes in movies, how people just
Yeah,
shoot
yeah.
up a vehicle. So I said I can't do that. Then I think the second thing, I wonder, should I just stay here in my car, right, and let them whether it's rob me or shoot me? Should I just not do anything? But I think the third thing that really saved my life was, as those two individuals were walking up closer to me, something, in me just, decided to fight. So I kind of jumped out my car and tried to grab one of the individuals that had a handgun. And next thing I know, I woke up laying on hard concrete with two bullets in my back.
Jesus Christ! And then your career that you worked so hard for, your basketball career, uh, it was over, like you said. I mean, you lost it, right?
Yeah, so I suffered two gunshot wounds to my back. The bullets were an inch away from my spinal cord and also an inch away from my aorta, as well. And my doctors say that I'm a walking miracle. That one that I survived that shooting, but also I'm not paralyzed from the waist down. So that incident ended my professional basketball career. I remember being discharged from the hospital. So my doctors, they told me about like the physical challenges that I would have of recovering from those two gunshot wounds. My shoulder was dislocated at the time. My lungs had collapsed as well. So I was, released from the hospital with a breathing machine, and also just in pretty bad shape physically. But nobody never mentioned the psychological effects
Yeah.
of surviving that shooting, and also having to live in a neighborhood where you was shot with no help. So I was dealing with the PTSD, the anxiety, the deep stages of depression, the anger,
Yeah.
right? Even the thoughts of retaliation from that incident. But nobody came knocking on my door to offer any help from victim services. Law enforcement, I think they did a good job investigating the case, but they never even asked me how I was doing. They never told me about any place to go to get victim service or mental health. They never told me about the state's victim compensation program that help crime victims access things like counseling. And they've never even connected me to a victim advocate in their department that's supposed to work with victims like myself. So I was left to deal with that incident on my own with no help.
See, so you had to. the justice system failed in providing you with information, resources, pointed you in the right direction to get some help. And then being the victim of a violent crime, you had to go a step further and advocate for yourself and do all this work by yourself. That's
Yeah,
just,
and
oh, go ahead, bro.
yeah, no, for me, when I was recovering, I started to think about it. Am I the only person that ever went through that experience of being a
Oh,
victim, right? And not getting any help. But I come from a family of victims. My father was shot in his chest in the 1980s. My second oldest brother is also a victim of gun violence. He was shot in his back in the 90s. I have two first cousins that are also victims of gun violence, and one of them is actually paralyzed from the waist down still today from that shooting in early 2000. So in my immediate family, 5 out of the 10 males are victims of gun violence. We all survived those shootings, thankfully, but we all had plenty of interactions with the justice system, with public health and hospital, but none that actually led to any services or resources. So I come from a family of generations of crime and violence. But I think the thing that really propelled me to doing this work was finding out during my last doctor's appointment that my doctor was sharing the story of this teenager who he had treated 4 years before I was shot. And that teenager was 14 years old, came into the hospital with a gunshot wound. As a result of that shooting, he lost sight in his left eye. And so as I'm, having my final surgery, my doctor sharing these details about that teenager, I started to realize that he was actually describing one of the teenagers that shot me.
oh
So the
my
doctor
God.
that saved my life also saved the life of the teenager that shot me 4 years prior. But just like me, he was released from the hospital back to that same community with no help. And I really feel like his unaddressed trauma played a huge role in my shooting years later.
Did you ever run into this young kid or gentleman now, and see him ever again? I mean, in the same community, or do you know what happened to him? Well, it's back
Yeah, so
there were you said there was two
yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah, so there was two people involved in my shooting, right? So the teenager that one of the teenagers that shot me that never got arrested, that's the teenager that was also a victim of gun violence 4 years
Okay.
before I got shot.
Okay.
But about a year after I got shot, that teenager was shot again as well. And that second shooting, from what I've heard, is that he have lifelong health complications. And I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't get arrested because of the second shooting and his medical health. Is one of the reasons why I think he didn't get arrested. But the second teenager was arrested about a year and a half after my incident, and he was 19 years old at the time. He was facing about 40 years in prison. And I remember the first day of trial, of me preparing to testify. The prosecutors walking me through the process. You're going to go upstairs. There's going to be a judge, a jury. The defendant is going to be there. And for me, that was a very scary experience. For the first time, seeing someone that was involved in my shooting, someone that ended my basketball career. So I was very nervous about that experience of
Oh, the
testifying. Um,
wide range of emotions that you were probably
yes,
going
exactly.
through.
Yeah, yeah. And then about, a thing that happened was I asked my prosecutor, so how much time was he facing? He said he's facing over 40 years in prison. And then I remember, I said, hey, can I talk to him? And at this point, I wasn't angry. I forgave those two teenagers that shot me, and I just wanted to talk to him, just to, let him know that I wasn't angry. I also wanted to find out what he was going through in his life that led up to that shooting. But immediately the prosecutor said, "No, we do not allow our victims to talk to our perpetrators." And I remember my detective; he was sitting with us in the room. I remember he kind of just jumped in and said, "Why would you want to talk to someone that shot you, someone that ended your basketball career?" And for me, I remember thinking I just wanted to let him know that I wasn't angry anymore, that I did forgive him. But then my detective, he said, he's so different from you. Look at you. You graduated from college. You're the star basketball player here in the state. But he could barely read or write. He dropped out of high school. Been in out of juvenile facilities. He was like known to law enforcement. And he was so different from you, right? And I remember thinking, like, how are we so different? Like, we
Yeah.
grew up in the same neighborhood, grew up in that same environment, violent environment, with not a lot of opportunity for young, especially young Black boys and men to succeed. The only thing that I thought about that made us different was maybe I was just a better basketball player, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had a God-given gifts on the basketball court, and I also had a strong family support and coaches that poured hours into me. That was the only thing that I thought was so
Well, that was
different.
huge. That's huge, brother. I mean, that
Yeah,
those are huge right there. From
yeah.
a medical, clinical perspective, those two things that you said are huge when it comes to a young person's life.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, still today, the teenager that was arrested, I don't know if he knows still t today, but he was facing 40 years in prison. But I ended up advocating him for to get a lesser sentence. So he was ended up being sentenced to 6 to 10 years in prison for my shooting, which I believe that was the right sentence. I survived that shooting. I didn't want a 19-year-old to be spending 40 years in
Yeah.
prison. That wasn't going to help me. It wasn't going to help him or his family. So I think that's when my healing process really started, and also working to work with crime survivors across the country. Based on those two experiences of the two teenagers that shot me, who were also victims of violence as well.
It's an amazing story, brother. I'm so glad that you are here. And what if I could be critical of the detective, maybe he's listening at who investigated the case. I think the one thing that this detective doesn't realize that you obviously have the emotional intelligence and you're like, I just want to talk to this guy. You're doing it. I'm assuming now, but I think I'm right. You did it so you don't have to. You can move on with your life. You forgave these two guys that are a product of the system and horrible experiences in their life. It doesn't justify what they did to you,
Correct.
but you practice something that a lot of people can't do, and you gave forgiveness
Hmm.
because harboring that, and you know this, Aswad, harboring that anger, that bitterness, that resentment, that I'm going to get you back. It's like drinking poison, waiting for the other person to die.
Yep.
It doesn't work. It just harms you and your healing, like you said,
Yep.
going forward. So I commend you, brother. That is
Thank you.
huge. You say you probably changed the course of that young man's life by
Yep.
advocating, he get a lesser sentence. And
Yeah.
hopefully, I don't know if he ever thanked you, but that would have been a powerful meeting if he did.
Yeah, yeah, and people hear my story, they actually think it's unique in some ways, but so we work with crime victims all across the country. So Crime Survivor for Safety and Justice is a national network of over 200,000 crime victims, whether it's families who lost loved ones to homicide, or victims of gun violence like myself, or victims of domestic violence, sexual assault. So we have a network of crime victims all across the country. And I think the main thing that we do is we listen to crime victims, their experiences, and also their perspectives as well. And for most crime victims, safety has never been about being tough on crime, right? Safety has never really been about, locking people up, as long as we can. Safety, it means that we want to hold people accountable, but we also don't want what happened to us to happen to anyone else as well. And so safety is really about how do we invest in prevention programs,
Absolutely.
invest in victim services, invest in the things that help stop the cycle of violence, which it also includes for people who came in contact with the justice system, being able to provide opportunity for they are, focusing on rehabilitation and getting rehabilitated while incarcerated. But also when they're coming out of the justice
Yeah.
system, being able to remove barriers and increase access to things like housing, jobs. Those are things that stop violence. Those are things that help promote stability as well.
Yeah, and you know this, Aswad. I mean, the recidivism rates are through the roof in this country, and I've said it even when I was a cop for a
Hmm.
long time. We need to be doing a hell of a lot more to equip people who are reintegrating into society, because, as you know, and maybe the listeners, what happens? It's great for you. Say, you were you're reintegrating into society where you have options. I mean, you're educated, you're smart, you have all these options with you. Well, what about the person that doesn't? And so they get right back into the same environment, and then some of them succeed, a lot of them don't, and then they're right back into the system. So we need to be doing a lot more. What that looks like, brother, I have no idea, but we need to do a better job at obviously prevention, but we need to do a better job too at reentry,
Yep.
you know, because most people, as you know, are not going to be in prison for the rest of their life. They're going to get
Exactly.
out.
Yep.
And we need to do a better job at equipping them so they can come out rehabilitated and be productive members of society.
Exactly. That's what
We
crime
have the
victims have
most
been calling for.
incarcerated people in the world. You know that.
Yep. It's a vicious cycle that we can change, and we can change it. The evidence is out there of actually what works. The key is how do we invest in those programs, right? Also, the key is that we have to change policies and laws, right,
Absolutely.
that remove barriers for people to get things like housing and jobs as well.
Well, I think one of the things when you were telling your story is the fact that, granted, when you were a victim, it was a while ago, but most states now have, I mean, maybe they did before, victims' rights. So you're a victim of a violent crime. A lot of agencies are required now to give out pamphlets, information to victims of serious crimes like yours that says, all right, here are your resources. Do you want to speak to a victim's advocate? Do we need to get you to a safe house? Do we need to call out social services? There is monetary compensation, if you're disadvantaged or something like that, and you don't have the means, So there are laws on the books, and I would venture to say, even back when you were a victim, Aswad, I mean, there was something that they didn't tell you about.
Yeah, and there was a lot they didn't tell me about. And so I'll start with, actually this campaign that that we're doing across the country around access to crime victim compensation. So every state, if you are a crime victim out there, if you know someone who's been a survivor, in every state, there's a program called the Crime Victim Compensation Program that's in state law and is administered by state agencies with a mix of like state funded and also some federal funding as well. And this crime victim compensation program is designed to provide financial assistance and a reimbursement to victims of crimes or their families for like crime related expenses, including
Mhm.
things like medical bills, counseling, therapy,
Legal.
changing the door locks, legal assistance, and
Yeah, yeah.
also mental health service. Also helps with funeral and burial costs. So there's a program that exists in every state, but unfortunately, we did a survey of crime victims, and we found out that 96% of crime victims do not access their state's victim compensation program. So we launched this national campaign to increase awareness and also increase access to the compensation program as well.
Is that percentage, which is a high percentage, Oswald? I mean, and I'm asking you because you're the expert. I mean, is it because of the complexity with the system? Is it the wait times? I mean, what are some of the reasons why?
This program, like in theory, it was designed, I think the first program started in 1965 in the state of California. So it was designed to help crime victims access vital resources. So one problem with this program is that it's a reimbursement model,
Yeah.
right? And so for a crime victim who lose a loved one to homicide, say if they don't have life insurance or have no means to cover the funeral and burial expenses, they actually can apply to their state's victim compensation program with the hopes of getting a reimbursement, right, for that funeral. So that's one big challenge. It's the reimbursement model. And often victims have to wait, months,
Yeah.
and we've heard years to get this
That's
program. So I'm, gonna-
ridiculous.
so, so I'm gonna walk through some of the other barriers that exist. So one, as I mentioned, is just a lack of awareness. Most crime victims do not know about the victim compensation program because it's a state program. Every state across the country have different policies and programs and requirements, right? And so some states, in order to be eligible for victim compensation, you got to file a police report within a short amount of time frame. For example, like 72 hours. In a few states. So if you are a victim, you got to file a police report within 72 hours.
What happens if a victim is afraid or they're getting retaliated against and they want to wait on it? Yeah, anyway, I don't agree
Yep,
with
yep.
that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, but that's how these programs are designed,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
also, the majority of crime also goes unreported as well. So, in
Yeah,
order to get
absolutely.
counseling, for example, that you got to file a police report in a certain amount of time. Most victims don't meet that criteria, and then in a lot of states, then you only have a few years or a year to even apply for the program, right? So that's one barrier is the time limits that exists in these programs, and in every state is different. Other barriers that exist is that in order to be eligible for the compensation program, that you must cooperate with law enforcement throughout the entire process in the most states, right? So you have to cooperate and fully
which
cooperate.
could be
You
problematic in a lot of cases.
Exactly, exactly. So that's another barrier that you have to cooperate. Another barrier that exists is that if you been deemed that you contributed to your own victimization, that you also may not be eligible for victim compensation. So in that police report said that you contributed to your own victimization, it goes to the claim office, and often we hear stories of people being denied because the agency said that you contributed to your own victimization, which often shows up on police reports as well. So that's just another barrier that exists.
So, for example, say if you're a member of a gang and you walk into a convenience store, I'm just throwing out a
Mhm.
hypothetical.
Yep.
You walk into a convenience store, get some food or whatever, and you're coming out and you get jumped by a rival gang and they shoot you.
Yep.
Is the system going to come back and say, well, technically you were in a gang, so yeah, that makes no sense to me. I'm not condoning the behavior, if the gang
Yeah.
member was doing stuff, but still, he or she is a victim of a violent crime.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
that's kind of a murk. I mean, they're all kind of weird.
Yeah. 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 So that hypothetical actually happens very often,
I was going to
right?
say it has to happen.
It happens very often, saying that people contributed to their own victimization. That's just gun violence. Think about, if you have a few drinks at the bar, young lady, you leave the bar, you end up being a victim of sexual assault. You go through your sexual assault exam, your toxicology reports, and say that you contribute to your own victimization because you were under the influence of alcohol or
Or
you
you were
had
dressed a
drugs in your
certain way,
system. So
or you were
those
dressed a
are the
certain way.
things that
I mean, that's
often
just
happen. So these
wow.
barriers exist across the country, and I've been traveling the country, hosting a lot of community events, listening to these stories of survivors. Some of these stories are horrific.
I can't imagine.
People's experience with the victim compensation program.
I can't imagine, brother. Well, let me ask you, kind of backing up a little bit. You mentioned when you went through your horrible incident, did you get? I'm assuming, even though I hate to assume, did you get any, counseling? Any kind of, talk to a therapist for what you went through that I imagine still plagues you to some degree.
Yeah, at that time, I was never made aware of the state's victim compensation program. I actually found out 10 years after I got shot about this program. And I was in shock
Yeah.
that this type of program
But
existed.
afterwards, you didn't get any type of, I know it would have been an out-of-pocket expense probably. And, you never sought any kind of counseling or anything like that for PTSD or anything like that.
You know the thing that helped me the most, and as a victim, I still deal with the PTSD, the anxiety, the panic attacks, right? The thing that really helped me the most was actually connecting with other survivors,
Yeah.
connecting with other victims, being in community with them, sharing our stories, healing together, them providing me kind of like tips and insights on what to do to navigate the PTSD. And so I've never, after that experience, received professional counseling, but I think the thing that really helped me on my healing journey was connecting with other survivors, sharing my story as well. It's one of the first things I did when I started to recover was share my story in the local paper, and it made the front page news because I wanted to share my story to let people know that hey, I didn't want to be just another young black man that was shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a college graduate. I did everything right in life. I was a star basketball player. Most people that have kids, want your kids to excel in academics. If they want to go to school, you want them to excel in something that they love to do. And I did those things, and I became a victim. So share my story was definitely part of my healing journey. But what I know now, what would have been so helpful for me after that experience, also would have been helpful to the teenager that shot me, was the concept of a trauma recovery center. So this is a trauma recovery center is a model that we've been popping up all across the country in communities where a crime victim can get access to clinical case management. They can get support in filling out that long victim compensation program. They can get support from housing relocation support. They get support with counseling and therapy, to help you decrease the flashbacks, the nightmares, the PTSD, helping to connect victims to other services, social services that they may need. And also being able to, what I love about the trauma recovery center model, actually meet crime victims wherever they are at in their community, right?
Yeah.
So the way traditional victim services is designed is that in order for you to get counseling, you actually have to go out to get services, right? So when I got shot, two gunshot wounds to my back, I couldn't walk for months, right? And so in order for me to actually get victim services, I would have to get on public transportation, go over two towns to the nearest counseling facility in order to get services, right? But a trauma recovery center, I would have had a case manager that's assigned to me,
Yeah.
being able to come provide those services to me in my home, and help provide that support. So the TRC provides that sort of outreach, and this is a program that we started in the state of California. Now we have over 54 of these trauma recovery centers across the country. That's really about building the infrastructure of victim services, primarily in underserved communities that experience the high rates of crime and violence in communities. So that would have helped me a lot during my
Yeah.
healing journey. Was a trauma recovery center.
If you did you ever foresee yourself doing this? I think it's God's work. I mean, what you're doing so much good for everybody in different communities. Did you ever picture yourself doing this as your
Man,
calling, as your because you're obviously very passionate about it. You were a victim, I get it, but you're very good at what you do, Aswad. I mean, did you ever think when you were in college and you're shit, I'm going to be working and advocating for people who need help?
never. I'm a basketball player. Right? I'm a basketball player. My nickname growing up through college was the Black Steve Nash. All
Yeah.
I did was play basketball throughout my entire life. When I graduated my undergrad, I got a degree in business management because we know I said well, after my playing career is over, I want to start a
You see, you're
business. Right.
smart.
So
You're smart. Yeah.
so I come from that field. So this work of working with crime victims, changing policies and laws in the criminal justice system and victim services. This is all new to me. This
Yeah.
past decade of my life, I do feel like it's my calling. I feel like God spared my life, for some odd reason back in 2009, and I believe today is to doing this work with survivors,
Yeah.
being able to take people who experience some of the most traumatic things that human beings experience, being able to take them, bring them together to share their stories, helping them heal. Also, what we do at Crime Survivor Safety and Justice, we train survivors to be advocates. We train them in understanding the legislative process in their states, and we build power by bringing those survivors together, taking them to their state capitals to change policies and laws
Yeah.
in their state. And we've been successful. We've passed over 100 reforms across the country that have reduced incarceration,
It's
has
amazing.
built more trauma recovery centers and victim services. And we've been doing it by building community and building power. And so this is my calling these days, and I really enjoy what
Well,
I do.
well, and if you ever, I imagine it, I don't even know. I'm assuming it happened. If you get somebody who says, "Hey, Azra, what do you know? Have you ever been a victim of crime?" As a matter of fact, I have. I've been a victim, and that brings a deeper connection that really resonates with another victim because you've been there.
Yeah.
You could say, "Look, man, I've been in your shoes. I've been through the emotions. I've been through the pain. I couldn't walk for months." So I've been, and that really resonates with people, brother. I mean, me being in working in behavioral health, I think I've told you before. I mean, I went through treatment, so I'm
Mm.
very empathetic for people who are suffering. It doesn't matter who you are, because I've been on the other side, just like you've been on the side of being a victim. That's a stronger connection when you're making those inroads into communities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you're doing God's work, brother. God bless you. And I mean, what position did you play in basketball? Just out of curiosity.
Point guard, and so I'm point guard. I'm still in the NCAA record books, so you can find my name. I think I ended my career. I was number 12 in assists. I think
Wow.
it's been a long time, so I'm probably down the list. But yeah, I was a pretty good basketball player. This work that I do today is tough. It's challenging. It's
Emotionally draining.
hard.
Yeah.
It's emotionally draining, but it's also so empowering as well to kind of build this network of survivors across the country, and also to make sure that our voices and our experience are at the center of public safety policy as well. For far too long, the voices of crime victims and the narrow voice of crime victims have also helped to advocate for more tough on crime and more punishment. We are working with survivors that is advocating for healing and safety, right? Advocating for prevention and rehabilitation and reentry, right? And so this work is deeply personal to me with my experiences, but also my family's experience, the communities that I work in. So I enjoy what I do every single day, and I don't take it for granted.
And this is a powerful legacy, brother, that you're going to leave this world
Mhm.
long down the road. I mean, I'm not saying basketball is not important. Obviously, it is
Yep.
to you, but this is a huge legacy because this is, yeah, people get to see how awesome you are at basketball, but you are affecting people's lives in a good way personally. This is the legacy that the world needs, especially right now.
Yeah.
Brother,
Yeah.
if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you? I mean, I know you've been on the New York Times, Time Magazine, you've been all over the place, but how can people find Aswad Thomas?
Yeah, if you are a victim or survivor out there, if you know a loved one, or if someone who just wants to support our work, you can become a member of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice at www.cssj.org. You can follow us on our social media channels, and also, as I mentioned, we're doing this Right to Heal Access to Victim Compensation campaign across the country. And so, if you are a survivor, we want to hear your experiences with the victim compensation program. So on our website, you can complete a survey to share your experiences. You can share your story through a video testimony. You can participate in the upcoming event. I may be in your city very soon. So, so reach out to Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. And we're looking forward to connecting with like-minded individuals like you, Patrick, and so many others who are passionate about our
Yeah,
communities. And all of
absolutely.
us want to be in a community that's safe. And I think we can get there by really investing in prevention, investing in the programs that stop cycles of crime and violence.
God bless you, brother. I'd love to have you back on, Aswad, because I think there's just so much we could talk about. You're a great guest, my friend. I'd love to have you back on. God bless you. For the listeners out there, everything that we talked about is going to be linked up in the show notes. Until next time, please be safe, everybody. Aswad, thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. And as we say, when survivors speak, change happens. So thank you so much
Absolutely,
for having me
brother.
on today.